Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. Good morning from Claremont, where we are excitedly preparing to welcome the class of 2028 and our new transfer families to campus. And for those of you who might happen to be tracking, that is in 11 days. So very exciting times. Today is our third opportunity to gather virtually as part of our parent and family orientation programming. And this one is a doozy. Today, we will talk about the Soll Center for Student Opportunity. And located in the center of campus, the Soll Center is a world-class program for supporting our students and alumni through their career journey. And we are thrilled today to be joined by Ursula Diamond, also a world-class person, who is Director of Student Opportunities, and Priscilla from her incredible team. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Anytime you have a question throughout the program, please feel free to use the chat at the bottom of your screen. You can just pop those questions in and either Priscilla will be able to answer them in the chat, or there will be time at the end for Q&A, and we'll make sure to get to all of your questions. So without further ado, I will hand it to Ursula to get us started.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. It is so fantastic to see you guys. And I am really excited, as Jeannie said, to be able to just give you a little bit more information about what to expect when students arrive on campus and start to participate in the programming and the activities and the resources available at our Soll Center for Student Opportunity. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is share my screen, and I have a little slideshow, and then we can kind of get going. All right, hopefully you can see this slide. Fantastic. So this is literally the Soll Center for Student Opportunity. A couple of our student workers there exploring the space and welcoming people who come into our center. So my name is Ursula Diamond, and I am the Director for Student Opportunities, which basically means that I help students navigate their career exploration while they're at CMC, and also as they progress through to being younger alumni. But also my main focus is making sure that students, when they are transitioning out of college, that they're getting the full support they need as college seniors. My colleague Priscilla, who you're going to hear from in a minute, is at the other end of the spectrum, helping all the students who are coming into CMC, making sure they're transitioning really successfully from high school. So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's start by talking a little bit about, I mean, you probably know all this already because you've already selected CMC as where your student's going to be coming, but I just want to just reiterate a few of the things that we are most proud of. And this reflects on the Soll Center, but it also CMC as a campus as a whole. So 3 things I think make CMC special. The first is the focus on individualized coaching and support. We are a small campus. We've only got about 1,300 students, and we have a good, nice coaching staff, which means we can really provide a lot of support at the individual, at the personalized level. Very important that we try and meet with every single student every single year, and that starts in the first year. And you'll see a little stat in that bottom left-hand corner. We try and connect with 90% of first years in a very, multiple different ways: individual appointments, workshops, programming. Priscilla actually managed to hit 96% this past year, so she's knocking it out the ballpark. So that's one way we're special. Second way is the amount that we invest in real-world career experiences. So what does that mean in practice? that we provide a significant amount of funding to ensure that as many students who need it can get access to summer internships right from their first summer, because we know that typically freshman and sophomore internships are either less available or particularly lower paid than when you get to your junior year. And so we want to make sure that we're giving those early transformative pre-professional experiences as much as possible. That's through internships, but also through a whole bunch of different programming like networking treks and industry meetups, like career expos, career panels, coffee chats, all kinds of things there. And then the third thing that makes CMC super special is this incredible community that is Claremont McKenna. I have worked at multiple universities and colleges, and I have to say CMC is quite unique in what a supportive, tight-knit, loyal community it is. And we see that through the alumni, we see that through the parents and the families, we see that through the faculty and the staff. And so part of our job at CMC is to help connect students to the right people, to help them explore and figure out what might be the best career path for them to initially explore and then keep exploring through their CMC years. So the way we do that is once they've kind of, a student has met with Priscilla and figured out what direction they want to move in, they have all of these different interest clusters that best reflect what most CMC students are excited to explore. Accounting and financial services and consulting and tech are probably our three biggest areas that people explore, but we try and cover the gamut of all the different areas. And these are just example bullets, right? If you or your student is really interested in pursuing a particular area that's not on this slide, don't worry, we got everything covered. But these tend to be the areas that CMCers tend to gravitate towards. And we have coaches that specialize in each of these areas. So let's talk about Priscilla. I'm just going to give her a little intro because she's very modest and I want to make sure she feels comfortable. But I just want to do a plug for why every student, first year students in particular, need to meet with Priscilla. We've done some research, we've looked at the data, and we know this for a fact. Students who have an interaction with Priscilla are significantly more likely to take much more advantage of all the resources that are available to them at CMC. They get to meet with other career services staff, they attend more career events and workshops, they complete their profiles, they have a professional resume that they're really proud of, and they tend to also receive summer internship funding. So there's really all of these advantages. And as I said previously, last year, Priscilla managed to meet with 96% of the first year class, which is crazy. I want to know who those 4% are. And we're going to be looking for them as rising sophomores to make sure they are accessing all of the resources they need to as well. So now I'm going to hand over to Priscilla, who's going to talk a little bit about what to expect as a first year student.
Hi, everyone. So as Ursula mentioned, I'm Priscilla Kobian. And so I am the first person that, your student is going to probably meet with in our office, starting off with an open house that we have coming up very soon during orientation. But for a lot of the first year programming, we have a lot of things planned. And that includes, meeting with myself as their first year coach for individual coaching, our open house. We also have a workshops that are going to be during the first week of classes. So very important upcoming stuff that really just helps them get ready for, the on-campus job process, for building a resume, for building for building their interview skills and just getting ready for, what's going to come up at CMC within those first few weeks and months. And then we transition on to, other stuff that come up for next semester or the summer. So we really do help them, throughout the whole process for this first year. I'm going to share a little bit of some examples of some of the programming we do. And so that includes our open house, which is the first one that we're going to have. So during orientation, all students are going to be invited to different open houses on that last Friday of orientation, and one of them is going to be in our office. So we usually have an ice cream sundae bar, and they're able to just get to meet us. We get to help them log in to, anything they need to access for our office. And it's really a good opportunity to just really get them there and know where it's at, know where to find us, and really kind of just start breaking the ice with us. Here are some examples again of our open house flyer. And then, as I mentioned, we have the career skill building workshops, which is that first week of classes. So I know it seems a little early on, but on-campus jobs open pretty quickly as students, start classes. So we want to make sure they are ready for that process, as well as if they're going to be joining, any clubs, any organizations that they want to be a part of, or if they just want to start connecting with people. We want to make sure they feel ready for that. So we do some workshops on how to apply to on-campus jobs, the resume and cover letter process, and then again, how to interview. Later on in the semester, we do have more workshops that focus on finding summer internships, networking, and other skills they might need, as well as second semester. But these are kind of just like the first things that are going to be happening in terms of programming. And then another very important programming that we have that the students seem to really like is called Peers and Careers. So these are some panels where our upperclassmen, so senior students, pay it forward to first years. And we have a panel for each interest cluster area. And they really just help them give advice on like, how did they get involved in this area? How do they find internships? Why do they like this specific area? Who are the people on campus that you can go ask for support? What are some places that you can apply to? Really just a lot of information that sometimes, first years have a hard time finding that information, or they're nervous to ask someone else. So it is a really, good inclusive space where students can ask their peers and get more information about how they navigated that space. And it really does help them kind of moving forward in their internship search as well as their career exploration journey.
All right, I'm going to take back over to talk a little bit about internships and experiences. And I know that this is one of the major factors that when the admissions office surveys incoming students to ask them what were some of the reasons that they were so excited to come to CMC in particular, internships is often at the top of that list. And so I just want to put it into a little bit of context as to how we look at those through CMC's lens. First of all, we have world-class education and faculty, but students really want to be able to put that into practice. And so internships really is an amazing way for a student to test out what they're learning in the classroom in the real world. And so at the same time, they're gaining some really valuable work experience and skills before graduation. So the more internships they can do, the more robust their resume is going to be by the time they graduate, and the more confident they can feel when they're recruiting. And so I would also say it's not just about skills building, but it's also testing out some hypotheses. Often a student will have an idea in their head that there's something that they would like to do. And then they do an internship. It just has to be for like 8 to 10 weeks. And they have a very clear idea as to whether they still want to do that or not. Or whether that was a terrible idea, they no longer want to do that and they want to pivot to something else. And so until you test a profession or an industry, you don't really know what it's like to work there. And so internships really are the best proxy for kind of figuring that out. At the same time, as we all know, finding jobs and internships is all about networking. And so this is a way to kind of put a toe in the water to kind of test, how do I feel about networking and talking to people? And it definitely, we definitely see it when we talk to our recruiters and to our alumni contacts, having internships on that resume really is an incredible competitive advantage when you are getting closer and closer to graduation. And so what do we do to kind of support all of this? Well, we have this program, the Sponsored Internships and Experiences Program, or SIE. And this program is trying to help students, regardless of their financial need, in pursuing summer experience. And what we try, our hypothesis is, if you have got to junior year and you have a good resume, you've already built up some good quality internships, then hopefully you're going to be able to take advantage of paid opportunities, paid internships that are going to like launch you towards your graduation and beyond. But for first year and second year summers, internships can be tricky. Not so many of them out there, and often they are unpaid or low paid. And so what we're trying to do is bridge that gap to make sure that students both have access to internships, but also have the funding to be able to pay for them. Handshake is our career development platform that we use. And, you know, at any moment in time, there's about 8,000 internships that are there. So there's no shortage of internships to apply to, but there's also, we have this incredible internship database that has been tracking what CMCers have done for their summers, you know, since about 2012. So as long as we've been tracking this information. So there's a whole host of additional ideas that students could pursue there. And of course, they're going to have the opportunity to meet with Priscilla to do some brainstorming and to figure out what that first summer might look like. The application for funding doesn't open until February, and it's going to close late April, beginning of May. So what that means is we want to create a window wide enough to allow students to take advantage of this, because they can't access funding until they have an offer letter in hand. And we don't want students to feel under pressure that they have to secure that internship by February. We want to make sure that they've got plenty of time to figure out their plans. And by the way, one thing I'll just add, not all first years take advantage of the funding or take advantage of internships. They decide there are other things that they would like to do in their first year summer, and we totally embrace that idea. Some students want to do internships. Other students want to do academic focus. Other students just want to travel or make money or spend time with their family. And so these are all great options for having a productive summer. But for those students who do want to take advantage of internships right from the get-go, we have this program in place to support them. So what did this past summer? I mean, we're right in it right now. Students are just finishing up their internships right now. And so this is what we're able to fund this past year. 464 students at an average reward of just shy of $4,000. And we allocated approximately $1.8 million. So at any given year, we probably have up to about $2 million worth of funding available. And this year we spent 1.8 million. And as you can see, 40% of all first years took advantage of this funding. So the other 60%, as I said, they might not have needed funding. They might have found a paid internship or didn't need funding to support them in their what they were doing, or they might have decided to do something that was not internship focused. 52% of all sophomores took advantage of funding, and then 35% of juniors, those juniors who are going into industries which have either poorly paid or just need that extra push to be able to get them to be able to live in the cities that they need to live in. So just pivoting a little bit from SIE to just like, what does all of this result in? Like, what can the student expect if they come to CMC? These numbers have been incredibly consistent. I have been at CMC since the summer of 2017. And these numbers are always consistent year on year. And so this is, I truly believe, by the time a student graduates in 4 years, this will also be the environment, if not better, that they will be recruiting into. So 6 months after graduation, which is the industry standard when trying to measure where people land, because some people take a little bit of time to figure out their plans after graduation, 97% of CMCers know exactly what they're doing, which means only 3% are still seeking employment. And, you know, if in a given class year of just over 300 people, it's 10 students are still figuring some things out for various reasons. And this is based off a really good knowledge rate. The knowledge rate is the way in which we tells you what percentage of the class actually we know what they're doing. And so typically 85% of the class are reporting back, and this is based on that data. This past year, and in fact, it's been pretty consistent over the last few years, $80,000 being the median starting salary for those student or new alumni who report their salary, which is pretty respectable. And then we also ask questions in surveys around how did they find their jobs and what was useful to them. And, 82% of new grads find career services super helpful. And 27% of new grads cite their internships as the greatest influence on how they found their current job. So again, just underscoring, particularly as you get closer and closer to that junior summer, how important those internships are. And then where did the students end up? Well, here's the pie chart. Hopefully you can see this on your screen with the different colors, but a third of our students are going into accounting and financial services most recently. And then they'll also find them in technology, in nonprofit, and in consulting. But as I mentioned previously with our interest clusters, not a bad number are going into creative, government, medicine, science. And so particularly with our new Kravis Department of Integrated Sciences, we anticipate that those last two may change a little bit. They may increase, which is very exciting. But yes, these areas are the areas where students are most likely to end up immediately after graduation in their first job. So the last thing I'm going to end up on is, as a family member supporting your student, we often get questions. Tell me what I should be expecting from my student, or how can I help them, or how can I know what's coming up so that I can track that and make sure that we're having sort of family discussions around this. So these are just 3 snapshots, one in the fall semester, one over winter break, and one for the spring semester as a incoming parent to CMC or family member. So in the fall semester, as Priscilla mentioned, that career services open house is the perfect way for a student to launch and to feel comfortable in our space and with our staff, and to kind of know what to expect and what's coming up. And they won't be doing that on their own. They'll be coming with their first year guides in a group. So it's going to feel hopefully comfortable and not too intimidating. The handshake profile is the way sort of everything we communicate, and we talk about events, and we talk about how to sign up for appointments. Everything career related goes through handshake. And so completing that profile is a really good first step. And particularly if a student is wanting to take advantage of an on-campus job, then absolutely that profile is going to be super important. The next thing is, if on-campus jobs or applying to clubs or anything like that, having a college level resume is really important. They often look very different from a high school resume. And we have this automated tool, VMOC, that uses AI to provide students with the template to help them build out their resume, but then also to score it against other CMCers so that students can know that their resume really is looking good. And not only using the technology to help create that resume, but then there's also a team of student workers who can review resumes as well. And as Priscilla mentioned, really early on, so everything's sort of happening in that first week, is the workshop series that we highly recommend. We get really, really good feedback on if you want to know how to write the resume or the cover letter, or you want to know how to apply to on-campus jobs or how to interview, that workshop series is really critical. And then you get the chance to apply to those on-campus jobs once in those first few weeks. And then after that, Priscilla is awaiting appointments, like to anybody who would like to meet with her one-on-one and try and get a sense of how to best make use of this semester. So we want to make sure that students really, right from the get-go, have all the resources and information that they need, so that they can feel confident about everything they're going to be doing during the fall. Now, a lot of activity over fall break. And not just for careers. There's going to be meeting roommates and res life and figuring out which dining hall has the best breakfasts and all kinds of things, not to mention the academics, right? So often students get to winter break and it's like, whew, I am exhausted, and that's fine. And we highly, highly recommend that everybody takes that fall break as a rest period, as a down period. It's the time to catch up on sleep. It's the time to catch up on time with family and friends. And obviously there's a lot of festivities happening at that time of year. And so we highly recommend just take a break. but particularly during that month, the rest of the month of December, to just catch up and feel good about yourself, get some rest. But then when you get into January, maybe start thinking about returning to campus and like what might be some things that I could do to kind of get a head start, because I know spring semester is going to be busy as well. And so like maybe updating that resume. Now maybe the time to start thinking about that LinkedIn profile and online stuff, because you can do it at home and have people look at it and be relaxed about it. And then maybe start having some conversations with family about, where am I going to be this summer? Which city, what country, what kind of things might I be doing this summer? And that might help launch some initial research on what kind of internships or experiences might I want to do. So pretty low key, but getting prepared for the spring. So then moving into the spring, another flurry of activity, right? We're going to have these peers and careers panels at the end of January, which is when those seniors are going to be talking to first years about what they have done during their time at CMC. Definitely Priscilla is going to be reaching out to many students to say, okay, let's talk a little bit about what your plans are for the summer and how can we help you achieve those plans. You'll be able to learn about summer funding and application process, and obviously starting to apply to internships. And as I mentioned earlier, if a student does want to take advantage of SIE funding, the application will be open from February to May 2024. So that's kind of a snapshot of what to expect and the sort of the rhythm of that first year. And then as a family member, we often get questions about this of like, well, this sounds great. How can I get more involved, or what can I do to support students? Obviously, the community is really important at CMC. And I just laid out a few things on this slide. All of these things are really valuable and high impact. But the lowest effort, if you just want to be like, I just want to check in with students and make myself available. If a student wants to talk to me about what it was like when I, in my career, or when I went to grad school, or just living in this city, if they have any questions around that, then joining Engage CMC, which I'm sure you have heard about a little bit already, but if not, we can go into more details as part of the Q&A. And you'll obviously get the chance to hear more about that on move-in day as well. But it's basically a way for you to set up a profile where you can say, I am willing to help. Literally, that's the label. I'm willing to help, and students can contact me if they would like to have a chat. The next thing, which is really important on our calendar, is during Family Weekend in February, we host with the events team and also with alumni and parent engagement, this amazing event. It's it's not long, it's about 90 minutes, and it's out outside on one of our quads. It is where we bring all the parents and family members who are there for a family weekend, and we bring them together with all the students who are on campus that weekend to just chat, talk to each other, get a sense. Where students often find it much easier talking to other parents than they do to alumni or employers, and it's just a really friendly, fun event. And then the third thing is, if you know of a job or an internship that you think might be suitable particularly for a first year summer, either at where you work or where you know of somebody who might have an opportunity available, we would love to hear about that. And there are many ways that you can connect with us, but the volunteer forms at the bottom of that slide is where you can kind of submit information, or you can reach out to me and we can I'll connect you with the right person on the team. So that's really how you can get involved in this incredible program and community. And here are our contact details if you would like to follow up with either myself or with Priscilla. And we would love to hear from you, or definitely meet students when they arrive on campus. So I'm going to stop all my talking here and see what's been going on in the background with the chat, and if anybody has any questions.
Great. Thank you, Ursula. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, and Priscilla has answered the first, but the next one, this is an easy question. Can we share the PowerPoint through email?
Yes.
So Isabella, if you'd like to maybe put your email in the chat, we'll make sure we get that over to you. For fall athletes who don't have time to work in the fall, will there be campus jobs available in the spring semester?
I'm actually going to pass this one over to Priscilla because she's the person who has been most closely together with our employer relations person focusing on on-campus jobs.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, so for fall athletes, we usually have them still try to apply in the fall if they are able to. So the way campus recruiting works is that there's usually jobs that are open in the fall and then they open again up in the spring, but usually the spring jobs, they're being hired to start working the next academic calendar year. So it is a little confusing there. There are a few jobs open in the spring, but if a student, who is an athlete, we do encourage them to still apply to things where there's maybe a little bit more flexibility. For example, a lot of student athletes like to work at Roberts Pavilion where there is a little bit more flexibility. They know their schedules. They're familiar that they, have a lot of other things going on as well too. So just starting off slow, we encourage them to, don't, do like a lot of hours, but definitely be open and communicate with whoever you're applying to, understand, what that role might look like and see if that is something they can do. There are some opportunities in the spring that do start in the spring, but the majority of them do hire for the next year, which is another option. So if a student is, whether an student athlete or not, is just thinking about, waiting a little bit longer for an on-campus job to see how their schedule goes, they can apply in the spring, and then sophomore year, they know they have a job. They're kind of more familiar with their schedule, and they'll hopefully just have an easier time with that as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what Priscilla just said. The vast majority, there are so many shifts available to work at Roberts Pavilion, which is the home of where the athletes are based, that there typically is not a problem. They're one of our biggest hires on campus. And so it really makes it super easy for an athlete to get that. And to be honest, it's one of the easier jobs on campus. It's a receptionist. You sit there, they often have their laptop open and they're working in the background. And so it's kind of a nice, it's a really nice fit for the athletes who don't want to travel far from where they are spending most of their time.
Great. Priscilla, can you talk a little more about the process of meeting with each first year, and do they reach out to you or do you reach out to them?
Yes. So it's a little bit of both. So I send a welcome email before they move on to campus. So in that welcome email, I give more information about how they can, log into our platforms that we use, how they can make appointments with me, how they can see our career services mentors, which are students that we have available at the office as well too. And so in that email, that's when we kind of start the first outreach for them to, make appointments with me, as well as in the workshops and at the open house. We really try to make sure they know how to do that process of how do they reach out to me either by email or by signing up through our platform. And from there, if there's anybody that I haven't met with, that's when I start doing a little bit more of that outreach and checking in on people. So at the beginning, it is a little bit busier. So students are usually signing up for the appointments. And then it can maybe slow down a little later. And then that's when I'll see like, okay, who haven't I met with? Who can I reach out with? Who hasn't been to an event or anything like that? But we do have a lot of programming. We have the workshops. I do some programming called After Hours with different topics throughout the months. And students really do come to those. So that is always, a lot of touch points there. And then the individual appointments, of course. So yeah, a little mix of both where people can, students can definitely reach out to me. And if at any point, I notice that your particular student is not, then I'll definitely be reaching out to them at some point.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I have one here from Shirley. Are there on-campus jobs, or remote internship opportunities during the regular school semester while students are in school? I definitely yes to the on-campus job piece, but what about remote internships?
So I'll take a start on that, and Priscilla, if anything you want to add. What we find is that during the first year and the maybe the sophomore year as well, students tend to be pretty busy, right? With the academics, with their clubs, with co-curriculars, with their athletics, and not just sort of NCAA, but there's a lot of club sports as well. And so there's a lot, and not to mention sleeping, eating, socializing. And so there often isn't time for a student to necessarily have the bandwidth to be able to take on a part-time job, either remotely or in Claremont. Not unheard of, but it just, I would say students need to figure out their schedule a little bit, get a sense of how much time they actually have available. We have so many on-campus jobs that typically it is so much easier for a student to get an on-campus job, get a good pay rate. It's all, it's all really close. There's no commute, and they're kind of getting that experience of working in person with a supervisor, which is super helpful. What we'll often find is juniors and seniors who have figured out their academic schedule, they'll often find that they actually have more room to be able to take on remote internships. And so that tends to be, but again, it's very much on an individual basis and what somebody's individual schedule looks like. Just while we're on the topic of campus jobs, I also saw a message about, are they available to everybody or just those with financial need? They're open to everybody. What we will often find, there are some areas where there's some work study available, which is specifically focused on students with financial aid, but those tend to be tutoring or community-based projects where there's special funding from the federal government. But what we try and do is make sure that the students who are on financial need are given priority, just to make sure that they are able to access the funding that they need as part of their financial aid package. But jobs typically are a mix of everybody, whoever is the best fit for that particular role.
And when do on-campus jobs begin?
Well, they begin when students typically are back on campus, but sometimes there's a bit of a lead time, right? A week or two, where they kind of give the space for students to be back, to apply, to receive a job offer and things like that. And so they'll be kind of rolling. I would say most on-campus jobs are probably, up and running by the first or second week of September at the latest.
Yes, we hire interns here in alumni and parent engagement. It takes a couple of weeks to get through the interview process. We usually interview at least 10 students per semester and hire anywhere from 2 to 6, depending on who's graduated. So they usually start working mid to late September. I would say more like late September. But they apply right away. So
fantastic.
Okay.
And then there was a question about the Washington, D.C. program.
Yeah, thank you.
So that is handled by another office specifically, which is the Global Education. They handle study abroad together with the Washington, D.C. program, together with the Silicon Valley program. So any student education that's done off campus. And they work very closely with a faculty member, Professor Maya Harkonnen, who is based in DC and who runs that program on a day-to-day basis. Super successful, always opportunities to learn about that. And we partner with those with that office, but that office is where it reports into the Dean of Faculty that on that side, on the academic, because there's such a heavy academic component to those programs, as well as the internship component.
Do they here or they don't really?
Okay. So we are tracking all of the emails here in the chat, and Rebecca will send the slides to everyone who has put their email in.
I think we have a hand raised.
Do we? Oh, yes. Bardia.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about what are some other first-year jobs? What are some common ones? You talked about the Roberts Pavilion for athletes, but just to hear about other ones to keep in mind of?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about those. So there's usually a lot of, office assistant roles around different offices on campus. There's the Athenaeum hires a lot of servers to work there. So the Athenaeum is a place that hosts dinners and speakers almost every single night. So a lot of students go and work there as well. Story House is the mailroom, campus facilities. So that's another place where they hire a lot of students. And again, these are a little bit more of those like entry level roles. So a lot of first years do happen to work there. The Dean of Students office hires a lot of folks for like the front desk. And then kind of, second semester, if you want to apply for something that's, going into your sophomore year, that's when you can kind of, give back and be a first year guide. A student can be a first year guide and do that their second year. So there are a lot of different types of roles and a lot of different opportunities for first years, but I would say those are kind of some of the main common ones. And then we have the research institutes, which do hire first years. Those are a little more competitive. So they do usually interview or want to have a little more information about, what the student has done in the past, if they have any research experience or just experience working with groups. But they do hire first years as well. And those just work a little differently. But yeah, there's a mixture of the types of jobs and the types of requirements they might need. Some do interviews, some don't. Some will want a cover letter and resume, some might just want a cover letter. So it really just depends on like what the student is looking for, and what they're, able to do that first semester and first year.
Thank you so much. So see you guys in 11 days.
Yes.
Can't wait to meet you, buddy.
You guys as well.
Definitely encourage your students to bring a few dressier outfits if they plan to be interviewing for jobs, because a lot of the interviews are very traditional and you kind of dress up and come in and answer questions, present your resume. So they need to be prepared for that. And just a funny thing I'll tell you with our interns, we do hire first years and usually keep them the entire 4 years here in our office. But the biggest pressure point in what they learn is answering the phones. It literally terrifies them. They've never even seen a phone that looks like an office phone in some cases, and just kind of how to answer it, take a message, chat with the alum or the parent on the line is always the thing that terrifies them. You see their face when the phone rings, they kind of freeze. You can do this, you got it. But we just had an alum come back for his 5-year reunion and came up to us and said, that was the best thing I learned at CMC. I'm a rock star. When I started my first job, I handled the phone. So just a funny story to share. Okay, back to the chat. Are the Washington program and Silicon Valley programs mutually exclusive, or can students apply and go to both?
They can absolutely. I mean, if they can fit it into their academic schedule, it's a semester-long program. So assuming they can fit it into their schedule, they can absolutely do both. It's a little unusual. I think students typically gravitate towards one versus the other. DC and the Bay Area are two very different cultures and types of work and aspirations from a career perspective. But there's nothing to stop a student doing both and doing study abroad, right? Spend very little time on campus. What I will say is often for these programs, they're not taken advantage of as much as you might anticipate, simply because students love being on campus and they want to be with their friends and they want to they don't want to miss out on all of the activities and the fun stuff, as well as being with their friends. So typically it's pretty straightforward to be able to, assuming you meet the requisite requirements, to be accepted into these programs, because they're always looking for more students to take advantage of them.
Thank you. How do students speak with / learn from other students who have had an internship that a new student might be looking at?
There's many ways. So there are curated opportunities like our peers and careers sessions in January, where we actually invite seniors to come and talk to students about ways to find internships and what advice they would have for them and things like that. For specific opportunities in that internship database, a student can use multiple filters to say, okay, I am an econ major and I would like to be in, LA this summer, and I'm trying to find something that's like maybe in the finance area, and they can use all of their filters and get some great results as to what other internships have had, and then they can click in each of those results to find out who was the student. And then they can actually find that student or that recent alum and have a conversation. What did you like about that internship? What were the pros and cons? Would you recommend it? And most importantly, are you still in contact with your supervisor or your manager? Can you connect me possibly with that person? And so that's another way. But then I'll just say organically, freshmen have so many interactions with their FIGs, with their RAs, with other students in class, with faculty members, and with staff members. There's so many different ways in which they will just chat about stuff and hear ideas and learn about what might be a really good fit for them to investigate. So there's I would say internships kind of imbue a lot of our campuses. So there's a lot of people talking about them. And so it kind of happens a little bit more organically, in addition to the programming that Priscilla puts in place for them.
Back to on-campus jobs for a moment. Can you review the timeline for that? When will those be posted? When will they open up and applications begin?
Yeah, so the on-campus job timeline is we plan to have folks open up the jobs on the 25th. So it's, I think, the Sunday before classes start. And that's kind of when they can really start applying. And from there, every job is a little bit different. Some leave it open for a few weeks. Some, really want to get those applications that first week because they need to hire people a lot quicker. So it really just depends on the office if they have a little bit more time. Research institutes usually start hiring a week or so after the campus engagement fair. So there's also a campus engagement fair on that first Friday. I think it's the 30th of August. And so they can also talk to some of the people from the research institutes there and learn more about those positions. But yeah, it really does start kind of that first week of classes. I have my workshop on how to apply to on-campus jobs on that first Tuesday. So right after kind of the opening of those. So that hopefully helps them kind of move forward with the process. I will give the students the timeline as well too, so they'll be aware of that. And yeah, anywhere from, the first 3 weeks of classes when they can, start applying and then go through that interview process and everything else.
Great, thank you. Ursula, what % of internships are done abroad?
Well, it's going to vary from year to year. Obviously, during COVID, it was 0, unless students were going home. But in a typical year, it's about 20%. So of those, 464 internships that we sponsored this past summer, about 100 of them were in international countries. And so, students are excited sometimes to do that travel and to explore different countries and to take advantage of this opportunity. Many other students are extremely excited to stay domestic, to stay US, and to explore different cities here. And so it really does depend on individual aspirations. One of the programs, I don't know if you have yet covered in any of these sessions, but one of our most successful summer programs is the Apple Fellowship, which is open only to first-year students for their first summer. It allows a number of first-year students to travel anywhere they want internationally, and it has a writing component is its main deliverable. And so a student might, for example, one of my favorites was a student who wanted to connect to their roots, and they did a DNA test. And they figured out, where are all of my family members from originally? And then they decided they wanted to travel to the 2 or 3 places in which they had the highest percentage in their DNA. And then they discovered where they had family members, and then they actually went on their own and traveled and met with these people, and then had this incredible writing project at the end talking about what they learned. And so that's sort of an example of an Apple Fellowship that is open to first-year students, and that's what brings a lot of students international. But we also have a number of partnered internships through the institutes where, for example, KLI, Kravis Leadership Institute, has a number of internships with organizations around the world where they're kind of guaranteeing CMCers some opportunities. And as long as that is actually happening in any given year, students will travel and be part of that kind of partnered internship experience, which is great because they have all that sort of support structure on the ground as well.
Ursula, do you invite companies or institutions to campus?
Of course we do. We'll often, it will be California-based companies, particularly those that are out of LA and San Francisco, and often where we have, really strong employer connections or alumni connections. And we have, employers will come individually when they want to recruit specifically from CMC or from the Claremont campuses more generally. But then we'll also organize what we call sort of an industry meetup, where we'll have like a finance afternoon, and we'll have 20, 30 firms all come to campus together. So a student can kind of walk around informally and chat to people and kind of get a sense of what that industry looks like. We have another one for consulting. We have another one on the more kind of non-profit space. And so there's lots of opportunities for students to interact there. What I will say is that as a trend generally, employers during COVID stopped all campus recruitment in person. And then after COVID, they were not as excited to visit any college campus because they figured out the efficiencies of doing everything remotely and online. And so I would say in the time that I've been at CMC, there's probably some of the larger firms have stopped coming to any campuses, but what we've seen is more of those medium and smaller size firms who have filled that gap and who are still very excited to connect and get their brand more visible on campus with individual students. And so there's a real kind of mixture year to year as to who will come on campus, but there's always a really good assortment of ways. Oh, and what I will also say is for our networking treks, we will travel to cities in order to go and visit employers where they are based. So even if they're not coming to campus, for example, this fall, over fall break, we'll be taking students into LA for creative and entertainment firms, spending a lot of time up in Burbank and Culver City. And we'll also be taking a bunch of students up to San Francisco to spend 2 days exploring all of the consulting firms up there and doing visits to those employers. Over January, over winter break, we'll be going to New York for finance, and we'll be going to San Francisco again for technology. And then over spring break, we'll be going to DC to visit government policy, humanitarian organizations, and at the same time, we'll be going to San Diego to visit medicine, healthcare, biotech. So there's a lot of opportunities to go out to the employers and meet them where they're at, in addition to them coming on campus.
So this is it. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Priscilla, unless you've been tracking anything else. You see anything else? Great. Okay. So wonderful. We're right about at time. So perfect. Anything else, Ursula, that you wanted to remind or mention?
No, we're just really excited. The RAs and the first year guides arrive on campus tomorrow in preparation to get everything ready for the students arriving. We are really excited to meet you in person.
And I will mention that our last opportunity, and I'm sorry if there's noise behind me, we're having the windows cleaned here in the building today. Our last opportunity to come together virtually before we're on campus together is Friday, August 9th, which would be tomorrow. And that is noon Pacific time, noon our time. And we will be meeting with the Dean of Students office to talk about student well-being and success. So lots of great information there. But until then, thank you for joining today. Rebecca will handle all of the emails in the chat. We'll get all that information to you. But if you have any other questions that come up, you can always send them to parents@cmc.edu. And we can take all of those questions or information you need and get you to the right place on campus. So thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.